All right, I'm pumped up. What's up? How are we today? What's been going on? How are you doing? What are your thoughts on the weather? I'm fucking with you. Uh, there's a song for Billie Eilish that's kind of like pumpy, but she stole the beat from like somewhere. Forgot what it's called. I think it's called Bad Guy. But she definitely like stole that that part. She definitely like took it from like somebody from before. I remember hearing that song. I'll get to it. But anyways, today's episode is adults forget how kids are born and need to adjust to life first before adjusting to society. Yeah, I think this was inspired by a conversation with my mom, or I don't know, something random, dude. Things just come up and I write them down. Uh, yeah, so like a lot of the things that I probably kind of like notice about being an adult is, well, here's the thing. I fucking love kids. I could spend 2, 3 hours with children and just kind of like play, build blocks, and do all these like small things that are just like mundane and kind of like meaningless. And I like saw that before. I used to always like love that. I used to always kind of like see my friends and spend like 10, 20 minutes with them and just like play with their children for a while. And I have a friend of mine that basically I'd only speak Arabic to this kid, and he was Indian. So at one point he started kind of like understanding me more, and it was like such a beautiful experience to kind of see them like evolve and grow. And a few people did not necessarily, I don't know, I think the nature of the world has been very much crippling. So I decided to kind of like, I don't know, a part of me felt that what I was doing is just being a kid myself. And a lot of adults were like, "What are you doing, man? You're an adult," and all that shit. And then recently I started becoming more myself. It's been like a couple of years since I kind of went through what I did. And I realized like my cousin, like I miss my cousin basically because I got to play with her daughter and I got to play with her when she was the when they start moving on all fours, like the first for her was with me, and I literally spent like 2 hours that one day with just literally like moving on my hands and knees, and then stopping, and then showing her how I'm moving my hands in order for her to kind of adjust, and eventually she actually did it, and it was such a beautiful moment. I think I don't know why I'm having all these flashbacks, just fucking beautiful. But memories of me as a kid are kind of like thrown at me with a supposed understanding. I was supposed to have understood something. And the science behind it is a bit more on a children until the age of 7. They have like their brain waves are still very receptive, and I think it's the theta state where they're still absorbing everything because like there's a lot to adapt to, man. I mean, like it would be much easier for a child probably to, or I don't know if it's easier or not. Really, the thing is, I really think that the plasticity of our mind could adapt to anything, especially when we kind of like allow ourselves to feel like to be kind of like mellow and to kind of reach that state where we're kind of like relaxed and absorbent. And that's where people kind of like, that's what people say, like when you enter the house and you sit on the actual couch, the worst thing you can do is watch TV because it numbs you down. And that's because that's when your mind is processing shit. And what you're doing is you're giving it a lot more. So instead of giving it something positive, you're kind of like watching some random series and shit like this. But my goal probably is to explain or is to elaborate on, imagine like waking up as a child, not able to speak, and the best way you can communicate the feelings that your physical body requires, is through the sounds that you make, and just kind of like the whatever whoever's around you, or because like we're born helpless. Oops. Other than like certain animals, like I think dolphins, the minute they're born, they have to be pushed up in order for them to breathe, and then after that, you're fucking on your own, bruh. You can do it. All insects have instincts built in them. Most animals, like most mammals, need to be cared for. whilst like the other kinds of species on Earth kind of have it like innately figured out in their head, like they know exactly what they have to do, where they have to go. There's not really that taking care part. And for us, we're very helpless until a very like until I think like when would we be capable of doing anything? 4, 5, 6? I'd imagine like at the age of 6, then we can actually like that's when we're forming our own personality or our own view of the world. And I feel at that time it's what I feel like very earlier on are trying to be are ingrained in society. And you seeing society is not really seeing the real world. And you haven't fully comprehended that you are a person, you're alive, you exist. All these things that kind of like come with the whole, where am I? I'm a toddler, I'm a 2 year old, I'm formulating my personality, I have these emotions and all kind of these things that are like popping in and out of your head. I and they talk about it like I think Jesus or in the Bible, like Jesus says, like to see the world from the eye of a child and to be able to look at the world the way children look at the world in a more like excited, creative way. There's a certain I think the truth behind it is that we as adults kind of like don't don't have that anymore. But as well, we are the ones that take it away from the children because like, well, who are we to our kids? If I had kids, who are we to them except for like their love, their trust, their kind of like their support, their comfort until a certain age happens and they could actually like fuck off and do whatever they want. I think my favorite like quote about this is I think the Israelites used to say like, "Give me the child until the age of 7, and I show you the man," and that's basically the age where they instill all that is moral to it. But then I love that quote specifically because it discusses how children are very much the products of their environments. And I can only imagine if I am born in a house and I'm exposed to this random ass society where everything's just crazy and you have to do all these things or else people will yell at you and you can't be yourself and. I could only imagine what kind of person I would be as I start growing up, what kind of like habits I pick up and what kind of reality I am actually absorbing or creating in my head in terms of how everything around me operates. And yeah, I don't necessarily think adults forget that they were kids at one point. I think the one thing that doesn't stick with us is how we are transforming from kids to adults. We don't really get to experience that transformation consciously. And I don't know if that's because we don't really have like the proper supports in the house for us to be ourselves, express ourselves, realize ourselves, and all that shit. Or if it's because society, all in all, is just super fucking distracting. There's a whole lot happening, and we always have to keep up with a whole lot. I don't know which part of it is it, but I wrote the fucking note, man. So I'm just gonna talk about it. And it is very fascinating how we are born out of this world, and we get to kind of like, I don't know, create whatever we want out of it or out of ourselves. That kind of like growth in your first stages, you're kind of like realizing who you are, and then after that, you're realizing what your surroundings are, and then you're learning how to communicate, whether it is through gestures or like fucking words. And eventually, you're supposed to be learning how to express. And then after expressing, you're kind of like evolving and you're figuring out the things that you want to express yourself in, or the things you want to express yourself to, and all these like smaller things, the back and forth that you get to like engage with as you slowly kind of forget that you have just arrived. Maybe that's just the labeling part where we label ourselves, where we're labeled like children, and then you kind of like reflect on yourself as a child instead of a human that's actually like growing and evolving in the process. And it's funny because like Imam Ali talks about this. He goes like, don't teach your children whatever you know because they're born to like a generation that's not yours, which literally means like the children, what they're looking at is not really what we're expressing. I think what they're looking at is what they could, there's this translation between what I am to what a child is. And they're seeing only the translation, which means whatever I'm doing doesn't apply to them because they have to translate it to how they might actually like see it. And as they grow, the world is changing with me and everyone else. So they're evolving within that translation and making creating it in their own version of reality, which means whatever we send to them, if it's not honest and truthful as an expression, they won't really like understand why we are expressing what we're expressing. And the best they could do is translate it from whatever language our generation expresses in, because it's a cultural thing. The adults are completely different than children because they've seen the world differently, and the world is always evolving. So I really think there's kind of like this awkward balance that happens between us and them. And we owe it to them to be honest with ourselves and maybe express the best way possible in order for us to be able to kind of like see the world a better place. And that's a video.